So you've just received your Roto-Control and you're eager to get going. We totally understand. A couple of things you'll need to do first. Go to our website and download the Roto-Setup app. The Roto-Setup app is for customizing everything in the Roto-Control, and it will automatically flash the unit with the latest firmware. So download the version for your computer platform, then start up Roto-Setup. Now, as soon as I plug Roto-Control into Roto-Setup, it will detect that it's an older version of the firmware. Here we go. Click Confirm to update. Once the update is complete, Roto-Control will restart on its own. If you want to start working with Ableton Live, you'll need to select Roto-Control as a control surface under Ableton Live settings. Under control surface right here, that you've got Roto-Control selected also as an input and output, and we also suggest that the input ports and the output ports that you tick track, sync and remote for both. Now you're ready to go. We have our 3 modes. We have our 2 dedicated Ableton Live modes, which is mix and plugin mode. Then we also have MIDI mode, which acts as a somewhat traditional MIDI controller where we can control any MIDI compatible hardware and software. So let's look at mix mode first. We've got Ableton Live open here. I hit mix and straight away Roto-Control will grab the track names, labels and colors directly from the active Ableton Live set. So there's nothing to configure on the unit itself. There's nothing to even save on the unit when in mix mode. And as I add channels here, you'll see that straight away reflective on Roto-Control, not only the colors, but also the track names as well. And we can keep going. Remember that we've got touch sensitive knobs up here. So anytime I touch a channel on Roto-Control, it's reflected immediately in Ableton Live. The default for the knobs on Roto-Control is volume. And as you can see, as I move up and down, it is reflected immediately in Ableton Live. Also, the buttons are track activation or mute, on and off. We can change the behavior of the knobs and buttons on the main page by holding select. We can choose volume, pan, any of the sends, solo, record arm, and track activation on and off. Now we have control over the pan of each channel, as you can see here. Also, the window up here is also telling me that the knobs have defaulted to pan. We can go back, we can change it to send A or B, and as I toggle this, it'll select the individual send. Here we've got send A, and again, you can see that's being reflected. Don't forget that also if I move these knobs in Ableton Live, they are reflected, it's bidirectional, so everything happens on Roto-Control. If I change we'll go back to volume on the knobs just to be safe. And we've got solo as well, so you can see now that we can solo, and we can change also to record arm. To access the return tracks, hit both arrow keys and they'll flash green. Here you can see we've got the return tracks and the main track. Now full control. You can see it's bidirectional. To exit, hit both arrow keys again. Now if I keep adding channels, you'll see I can scroll across with the arrow, and if I change the volumes here, you'll see that as I move, the knobs will snap to the values. We also have a track focus mode as well. We hit function. When we hit function, we kind of flip the channel, and now we have the channel name And we have full control over volume, pan, and the sends. So if I select a different channel in Ableton, it'll be immediately reflected on Roto-Control, including the names, as you can see up here, and colors. To exit, hit function again. We also have Ableton Live transport controls from play, stop, record, session record, loop, punch in and out, and rearm. And that's mix mode. And mix mode works in tandem with plug-in mode. With plug-in mode, Roto-Control works a little bit different to your average MIDI controller. So normally when you try to learn a plugin from Ableton Live, you normally have to go up and hit MIDI and then assign and so on and so forth. With Roto-Control, you don't need to do that whatsoever. So let's grab a plugin from Ableton. Let's do a native plugin at the moment. Let's go drift. Let's put drift into this MIDI channel number 2. And here you can see the track and the plugin is displayed immediately on the Roto-Control. Let's rename this as well. Let's go synth. And Roto-Control updates the labels immediately. We've got a whole lot of controls here. Down in drift, we want to control this synth. So how do we do it? We tap learn on Roto-Control. We touch the knob or the button that we want to learn the parameter to. Now remember that the buttons and the knobs are independent of each other. So let's go. First knob, learning. So this means that the Roto-Control is waiting for some info. Let's go to the octave switch up here in drift. I turn that. Straight away, Roto-Control has not only assigned it, but it's also grabbed the label as well. Again, I'm moving the octave switch here, and it is bidirectional. Let's learn another one again. Let's go shape. Shape has been learnt. Let's do another one. There's frequency. Now let's do some buttons. Let's try filter type. There we go. You can see there's 2 types of filters on this particular synth, and it's reflective on Ableton as well. And you can see that happening also on the Roto-Control. What's really important to note is that you only need to learn plugin parameters once, and it's forever stored in the machine. So anytime I recall the drift plugin, the learnt parameters will appear immediately on Roto-Control. Let's put drift into another channel. Let's put it into MIDI 1 up here. And you can see that straight away the unit, because I've selected now drift 1, the unit has selected that channel and that plugin. I go back to synth or drift 1, you can see also that the parameters are snapping to different values. So what happens if I want to unlearn or clear an assignment? That's easy too. I just hold learn, I keep it down, and now it flashes red. I touch the knob or the button I want to clear. I have the prompt to clear, tap again, and now it's cleared. There's a world of third-party plugins, and we find the method I'm just about to show you works best. So here we've got Arturia's Acid V. Let's drop into track 1. Now we need to open up the parameters by ticking this little triangle box here. And now we need to configure the controls that we want to learn to the Roto-Control. So we need to click Configure, and the plugin will open up here. Now let's try for 4 controls up here. We'll go with cutoff, resonance, envelope mod, and decay. So I simply touch those knobs on the plugin, and we will find that those have been placed in the parameters in the plugin, where you can now click configure to confirm this in the plugin. Then we move to the Roto-Control itself. Again, tap learn, touch the knob, move the parameter, and so on. Now we have control over this plugin. In order to use Acid V in multiple instances with, say, different presets, we need to save this configuration as the default. To do that, I click in this title bar up here, and you can see Save as Default Configuration. This ensures that each time I select Acid V, that the learnt parameters to Roto-Control will appear. So now I can add Acid V to track 2, and we'll find that we already have pre-configured. To show that they are at different settings, first of all, Roto-Control will actually tell you the track and the plugin that you're on, but let's set them at different levels. So in track 2, I'm going to put them all to a minimum, and in track 1, put them all to maximum. And as I select each track, you'll see how the values change. That's the beauty of our motorized knobs. With the sell or select button, if I keep it held, I can choose a plugin in that particular chain on that particular track. Because it's bi-directional, I can choose the plugin on Ableton or on Roto-Control. Cool. If I tap select, we can now activate the plugins as well. We can turn them on and off. If I want to select another track in Ableton, I can hold function and select the track that way too, or I can go back to mix mode because they kind of work hand in hand with one another. And similar to mix mode, plugin mode also has a full Ableton Live transport controls. Roto-Control can also lock to a particular plugin. What do you mean by that, David? Well, if I hit this little plus key and it starts to flash green, what Roto-Control will do will remain on this plugin with these controls, even though I can navigate elsewhere in Ableton Live. So this is great if you want to jam on a synth, yet you need to do other things over in Ableton. So it will stay locked to this particular plugin. Now, as you can see, the default for the labels is a dark blue and a white. We did that just to distinguish it from other modes. But with Roto-Control, we can actually customize these labels. Now, first of all, Roto-Control will take the labels automatically from Ableton Live. But if you wanted to relabel them, you can. And of course, you can recolor them in the Setup app. So here we have a set with a number of different plugins. Some are the same. As you can see, I'm scrolling across and everything has already been learnt, or most of the parameters that I want to control. Now, what happens if we've got some automation on these clips? Remember that we have two-way bi-directional communications with Roto-Control and Ableton Live. So here you can see I've got some automation written in on this clip right here. And let's put some more in. Let's go to envelope mod, and I'm just going to just very roughly write that in. Let's do some decay as well. So our knobs are moving to the automation as recorded, as drawn into the clip. But what happens if I want to take over a particular control? That's not a problem. Remember, you're not going to break the knobs whatsoever. So, and because it's touch sensitive, all I need to do is say, grab the cutoff, and now I have control over the cutoff. You can actually see it moving in Ableton Live. Now we know we've recorded that automation. If we want to go back, we can just rearm it and we're rocking again with the automation that we wrote. So we can also rearm on Roto-Control because we have transport controls. So without stopping Ableton Live, I just hit rearm, and there you go, cutoff is now moving to the automation we wrote. And again, if I move between other clips in Ableton Live or other channels, it'll show the automation on those clips as well. Working with macro, racks, and group tracks. Let's have a look. We've just added Acid V to our track 1, but perhaps we want to add an audio effect as well in this chain. Let's go with EQ3. And perhaps let's put a echo in there as well. Great, so now we have 3 plugins in this particular chain. I want to now group these to create a macro. Holding Shift, I click on the titles of each plugin. And our macro controls come up. So here I've mapped a couple of different controls across these 3 plugins. On macro 3, I've got decay and the dry wet on the echo. Macro 2, I'm controlling echo time divisions and also the high gain on EQ3, and macro 1 is cutoff and gain low. Roto-Control relies on the naming of plugins in order to remember the plugins that you want to use and also the learned parameters to Roto-Control. So it's important when working with macros or an instrument rack that you give your rack a unique name. At the moment, instrument rack is not going to cut it because that's a generic name. So let's rename this 303 EQ Echo. Let's go ahead and save that. So you can see Ableton has saved it in my instrument rack. So now we can map those macros to Roto-Control, and we'll be able to recall them if we want to use an instance of this again. You can see that the instrument rack has already been labeled on Roto-Control already and that it's selected. So let's go and learn these 3 macros. Cut, time, and decay have all been learnt to Roto-Control. Now we have full control. So now let's set this particular instrument rack to a low setting on these macros, and let's add a copy of this into track 2. Here it is on track 2. I'm going to set the macros up high and now go between track 1 and track 2. Track 1 and track 2. Now, this works for instrument racks, effects racks, and variations thereof. MIDI mode is a way of controlling any MIDI compatible hardware or software. There are a number of ways to learn devices to Roto-Controls, knobs, and buttons. The easiest way is if your device sends CCs, we tap learn, and because it is touch sensitive, we touch the knob or button, remembering that the knobs and buttons are independent of each other. I tap the first knob here, it's telling me knob 1. Now it is ready to learn. Learning is telling me that the rotor control is waiting for some information. So here is where I can either manually enter the channel and CC. I can also set my min and max values here as well, and I can change the color of the display. A really cool thing about rotor control is that it will grab the channel and CC from the external device, so long as your external device can send CC. So here I've got it set up with the Electron Syntact, and I'm going in and out of MIDI from the rotor control to the Syntact. Here we're ready to learn. I'm on the filter page here on track 11. Now if I just touch the frequency knob, you'll see straight away that rotor control has grabbed channel 11 and CC 74, and that is now mapped. I press learn to confirm, and you can see rotor control default label is channel 11 CC 74, and if I move this knob, you'll see on the Syntact it's also moving. And because it's bi-directional, if I move the knob on the Syntact, it's going to move on the rotor control. With the Roto-Setup app, you can further customize labels, colors, haptics, and much more. The rotor control can save up to 64 setups, and each setup can consist of numerous devices across different channels and CCs, of course. You can also import and export these setups via the Roto-Setup app, and recalling a setup is that easy. Now this is stored on the unit as well. The great thing with Roto Control is that because the buttons and knobs are independent of each other, I can assign this as a toggle, and if you can see on the Syntact, I am tapping through the filter selection on this particular channel. I've also already mapped the frequency and resonance. Whilst having all this control over your MIDI gear is fun and definitely creative, we've added a motion recorder. This brings Melbourne Instruments motorization to your external gear. And this is where the Roto control stands out. Our transport button over here in MIDI mode opens up our motion recorder, and you can see we've got play, stop, record, erase, and playback modes. The first page of learned parameters to the first 8 knobs can be recorded as automation in motion recorder. Under function, we've got our options for internal and external clock, so we can slave rotor control to an external device via MIDI, or we can use the internal clock, which will also send MIDI clock with BPM, and we set our length for our motion recorder. We have 16, 32, 48, and 64. We'll leave it at 32 for now. Hit function to exit out of there. And now we can, back to transport, now we can motion record. Cool. Motion recording is very simple. We just hit record. The transport key will flash red to know that you're actually recording. When it gets to the end of the phrase, it'll just simply loop. So let's try it. Gone into red. Blue means we've come to the end of the phrase, and now it's just playing back. And you can see that frequency and resonance are mapped here, and you can see that moving on the Syntact, and also the Syntact has already started in sync to the internal clock of the Roto control. We can keep going and keep going. If you're not happy with your recording, we have the erase button here where you can re-record your automation. It prompts me to erase any of the first 8 knobs, and I simply touch again, and you see it turns from red to orange. Hit erase again to confirm, and we're done. And you can see nothing there. Now I can go back and start recording again. If the motion recorder is playing back and you accidentally hit learn, you'll be prompted that you'll need to stop the motion recorder in order to learn something, or even to select another setup. So it's a fail-safe. So if you're jamming, you're playing live, you're not going to be interrupted. Roto-Setup app allows for further customization in MIDI mode and plug-in mode. In MIDI mode, we can also enter the values per knob and button, and we can also change the labels. Here I've changed the first knob to the word great. If I change the color, you can see that this is all happening and reflecting immediately on the unit itself. Here I can enter MIDI channel, CC, NRPN, the type of resolution, and we can also change the haptics on these knobs. So I can turn a smooth knob into steps, and I can even label each step as well. Now this is kind of hard to show on camera because it really is, you need to feel it. Let's do this into, say, 4 steps, and we can label the steps. So this could be something like, filter types like low pass, band pass, high pass, and notch. Now, when I turn the knob on Roto-Control, you can see that it's displaying these labels. The knobs and buttons are independent of each other. I can obviously relabel the buttons to on off, not a particularly great name, but that's what I've chosen at this moment in time. I can change the color, and I can also change the RGB backlight. So the on color, I can have something completely different, and the off color can be customized. Now at the moment, we've got it as a push. I can change that to a toggle. Again, I can enter steps just like I did with the knob. Although there's no haptics here, it just literally becomes steps. If we have a look in a selection I've done over here, I've relabeled filter types on electron syntax, and it cycles through. In MIDI mode, we can rename the setups demo video, and you'll see that's reflected right up here as to which setup I'm on. If I press select, here's where all the setups are. You can see I've got one called hello and demo video, and I can very quickly select any setup I want. With the Roto-Setup app, I can also import and export setups. So if I've learned a whole lot of hardware devices or even software, I can share them with friends and import. This is straightforward because you are importing and exporting on the active setup. As you saw previously in plug-in mode, Roto-Control will automatically grab the label from the plugin parameter that you've learned. Should you want to change the color, here's where we do it. Similar, I can just change the color, and here I can actually relabel it. And with plugin mode on the Roto-Setup app, we can also import and export plugin settings so we can easily share with others. We can navigate pages. It'll tell me the version of the firmware I'm using. And as you saw at the start of this video, Roto-Setup will also update your firmware. We highly recommend keeping your Roto-Control up to date via the Roto-Setup app, as we're always looking to improve and add new features to the Roto-Control. Be sure to keep an eye on our website, and we'll have more tips, tricks and guides with Roto-Control very soon. Thanks for watching.